my lane fast, call it high speed. I've been working hard, yeah, I've been working nightly. If you think you'll win, ha, nah, likely. I be taking shots, yeah, cold-blooded, icy. Watching numbers grow is what I call sightseeing. In the front row, run it up when they hype me. The following grows, they know how to ignite me. Call me CEO, I've been running shit right, see. And I ain't playing games, I create my own lane, making pleasure out of pain, turning losses into gains, I'm the boss, I'm making change. I've been rocking this exchange, popping off and risking things, gonna make a fucking name. I just wanna be famous, but I don't want that cheap fame. No, I'm not that vain, I just wanna be greatness.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for coming. I've already talked to a lot of you in the chat. Today, a very special show. We've been making content for about a year now, and got the one and only Aron Ra to come talk to us a little bit today. I am going to be giving some books away as we go through this, so hang around and win a book. If you are one of the winners of the books, in order for me to get it to you, you will have to email me at theKentuckyAtheist@gmail.com. And with that, let's just go ahead and get into this. How are you doing today, Aron?
I like that you use an abandoned mansion as your background, as of course I do too. There's something intriguing about something that was so beautiful and was discarded when it was beautiful and is now slowly being reclaimed by nature. I don't know what it is that that I find appealing about that.
I feel the same about that. I've actually got some like old abandoned churches that look like this too, and I don't know. It's just it has that it just has that feel to it that I like. I don't know. Spooky settings and abandoned places. What do they call that? Liminal spaces. Yet still,
as spooky and creepy as these abandoned buildings are, it's still better than where it actually lives.
That's true for me too. So, I had, whenever I first started the channel a long time ago, I actually got in an argument on one of your Twitter threads about near-death experiences with some. I'm only guessing by some of the things she said, but I think she was probably one of the QAnon folks. But me and her went back and forth for like 2 days in that same thread, and then eventually you were like, "Look, you don't have anything. You're just making it up. You're just believing what you want to believe." And it was. She backed off at that point.
I'm glad about one thing. I mean, if I had my life to live over again, I wouldn't be making the same mistakes. Of course, I think I'd be a much better person on my second run if I had a second run. But it is the mistakes that kind of made who I am, and one of them is my foray into spiritualism, neo-pagan spiritualism and transcendental meditation and all of that. And I remember when I believed all of that, when I was convinced that I was having paranormal experiences, that I'm encountering extra-dimensional beings, and when I can see these entities in the room about me, all of that. When you're wrapped up in faith, all of that seems so real.
Yeah.
But I did have a thing where it needed to be true. It couldn't just be something that I believed because I wanted to believe it. If it's true, then there's got to be some way to back it up beyond what I see. And so I talked to a bunch of other people who were into transcendental meditation, and I couldn't get consistency among all of these. So it was very clear that a lot of the people that were claiming to do this were not really doing this. They're lucid dreaming in many cases. And in the very few that didn't just seem to be like that, I put some of them through tests because I needed to You know, we're going to have this person go out of body and show up and visit me here, and I'm going to rearrange the furniture. She doesn't know I'm going to do this, but I'm going to ask her about it the next day at school, and we're going to. And I was impressed that she seemed to. It's like she was really there. She got everything right, not even knowing she was going to be tested. And but the interesting thing about that is, decades later, through the power of the internet, you find people that you knew back in high school or whatever. She's not a spiritualist anymore at all. She doesn't believe any of it. She's a complete rationalist now. And a couple of people I ran into that I used to do these things with, we would have shared experiences, and they're rationalists. They don't believe it themselves. And not only do they not remember all these details that were so important to me, they don't remember them the way that I did. They don't remember them at all.
Yeah.
So at some point I had to realize that the way I remember things is not the way they actually happened.
Right, right.
That's a painful realization, by the way.
Yeah, you kind of, because I used to be a believer too, and actually something you and I have in common was we were both raised by Young Earth Creationists, around Young Earth Creationism, and I hear a lot of the things that you say about, you know, well, if it's not in the Bible, then it's not true, and stuff like that was said to you and things, and my high school taught intelligent design, so it's a lot of those things along the way as I've followed you have, you know, I hear you talk about it, and I'm like, wow, that strikes a chord for me, because I experienced so many of those same things where, and I've told this story before. When I was 5 years old in Sunday school, they're talking about Noah's Ark, and I asked some kind of question about how did they get all the animals on that boat? How did they build a boat that big? And I was told, if you want to ask questions, you can burn in hell at 5 years old. And Southern Baptist.
We don't want people who understand things. We just want you to smile and nod and gullibly believe whatever we tell you, just because we told you to.
Yeah, it's and at the time, you know, and growing up, that didn't even seem odd, which is the really bad part, is that wasn't to me a weird thing to say to a kid or anything then. After going to college and learning a lot of stuff and everything, I was like, looking back on it, I'm like, wow, that was kind of crazy now that I've got a little bit of culture to my life and things. And the claims that the Young Earth Creationists make about stuff, and the especially the projection that they try to push on atheists, such as your religion is evolution, and you know, the crazy
they know that faith is indefensible. And so the only thing they can do is try to do the tu quoque fallacy of you're just as bad, and pretend that we have faith too.
Yeah. And I find myself having to define faith quite often.
Yeah, I do as well. And they're always trying to change the definition some way so that they don't have this glaring weakness.
Yeah. Yeah, they, you know, it gets carried away a lot, because especially with Young Earth Creationists, they've kind of shifted into this position of where, rather than try to defend, you know, the indefensible position that they hold, they would rather attack atheism. And I have to stop myself sometimes and say, okay, fine, we'll let all that be true, that I'm awful and hate God and whatever else you want to put on me. We'll let all that be true. Now let's talk about that crazy thing you believe. And how does that make that true? And One thing that I've heard you say is that there is no position that they hold that isn't fallacious or full of falsehoods and lies.
I think the way I put it is that every logical fallacy has been used as an argument for God, and every argument for God is a logical fallacy.
That's it.
Another way to put that is that there's no actual factual evidence for God, nor logically valid arguments either. And I mean that. I mean, I've talked to so many apologists. I've debated all of these people that, you know, base their careers, their channels, whatever, they're on defending God. And the best of them, the best arguments that they have, like look at William Lane Craig, for example, his Kalam cosmological argument. He's got two premises that are not necessarily true, either of them, and the conclusion is a complete non sequitur. And that is the best argument they have.
Yeah, that's and you know, another thing with them is no matter how many times that this argument has been broken down and explained the problems and why it doesn't follow and everything wrong with it, such as a Kent Hovind like deal, they tend to just continue to repeat the same thing over and over, no matter the fact that they know that they're wrong at some point. Yeah. You know. And,
one of the other things that I've noticed, and this happens in politics too, I just made a video about this recently, that when religious believers get into politics, they practice the same thing, where they just keep repeating the lie, even when they know that everyone knows that they know that they're lying. Yeah. Even when they know that everyone knows that they know that they're lying, they keep repeating the lie anyway. There's never an admission. There's never a confession. There's never okay, fine, you got me. Just keep lying. That Christy Nome book tour, where she made up this thing about having met Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
And so she goes on like 6 different talk shows, and all of them press her, "Did you meet Kim Jong-un?" And she comes up with all kinds of the same stupid excuses, but never ever say yes or no. And if somebody says for her, okay, so what you're saying is you did not. And she says, no, that's not the answer. But she won't say yes. Why not say yes? You've already said it's not no. And it's a yes or no question. It has to be one or the other. It's not like you met him, but it was only in a dream.
Yeah.
You met him in a bullshit anecdote that you made up, but that's still no.
Yeah. And with that story specifically, I watched your video on that, by the way, but with that story specifically, like, she could actually have, you know, found at least somewhat of a graceful way out of that by just saying, okay, yeah, I embellished and told this story and it wasn't the case. And that's why I'm taking it out of the book. And she could have done all that, but instead she's chose to go on every show and repeat the same lines over and over about it being, well, I'm not going to discuss my conversations with world leaders. Yeah.
And then
it didn't happen.
The justification that she put in for why she killed her dog, right? She included that story in there because she wanted people to know that she was honest and told the truth, so that she could be counted on to own up to responsibility should the moment arise, because she wants to be vice president, because she wants to be president.
Yeah.
And she knows that nobody's going to elect her as president, but Trump might appoint her as vice president, and he's a 78-year-old fried food fiend, so it's very likely that if she were vice president, she would become president. And so you have this nobody trailer trash from a state with less than 1 million people in the entire state, and she ascends to fame and greatness.
Yeah. Which, by the way, she isn't allowed in 20% of.
Yeah, her own state hates her. because
But,
she accused the local indigenous populations of hosting drug cartels
yeah,
without any evidence at all, based on nothing, just like her assumption of meeting Kim Jong-un. So the purpose that she expressed to make herself look honest blew up and made her out to be a very clear and unambiguous liar. So she was that close, and now she's ended her career.
yeah, yeah.
And speaking of that, I'm gonna be doing a lot of. I'm not going to be doing a lot of creationism videos this month. I or maybe probably next month, very many of them either. I'm going to be focusing on more politics stuff. I'm trying to address Project 2025 and all of the ridiculous propaganda that's going into that, and because this is shit that people need to know about. For example, the propaganda bit. When you hear about the Biden crime family, there's one guy who is not involved in government, who Joe Biden's Department of Justice, Joe Biden has allowed the Department of Justice to indict and investigate and try his son. Right? He's not protecting. He's not using the powers of the presidency to protect his son. You're on your own, kid.
Yeah.
Right. But then the same people who accuse Biden of anybody named Biden of being part of the Biden crime family, which would imply more than one person, right? Those same people will defend Trump, saying that it doesn't matter if he were to commit murder on Fifth Avenue, they would vote for him anyway. So obviously the crime thing isn't an issue for you. Right?
Yeah.
You don't care about law and order. When every member of the Trump family, except for Laura and Tiffany, are under criminal investigation at the same time, that's a crime family.
Yeah. Quite literally. Yeah.
So you see the type of projection that religious believers use, not just in defense of their religion, but in defense of their politics, which is strangely even less rational than religion.
Yeah. That's one thing that I've pointed out several times is how the Christian nationalists or religious right, however you want to say it, they've adopted many of the same tactics of the Young Earth Creationists, and they seem to be in this thing to where no matter how outlandish the lie, they know that there's going to be a certain percentage of people that just won't check and just won't question it. And
it's like the marquee said that on the front of that church, it says, when your faith is big enough, the facts don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. That's and completely against fact checking, which blew my mind. It was like, I was like, how does that even? What are you?
Okay, so that gets back to the topic I'm going to be talking about for the rest of this month at least, and probably a big part of next month as well. There's a document called Project 2025 that's produced by the Heritage Foundation. It's a 920-page document that is a manifesto explaining how, if Trump is elected again, then they will gut the United States government within 180 days. Our democratic representative constitutional republic will be reduced to an authoritarian theocracy within 180 days. Yeah. Only straight, white, rich Christian men will have any rights left, and not even all of them. Everybody else is going to suffer. Anybody who is non-binary, anybody who's genderqueer, those are all going to be criminalized. And I mean criminalized. If you have a trans child and you acknowledge that your child is trans, those parents are going to prison under a felony. They're already trying to implement that now, to give you some idea. Yeah. But one of the things that they're pushing for is they want state news, like North Korea, like Nazi Germany, where If you listen to any other news, if you could find any other news, that would be illegal. You're only allowed to listen to what state-sanctioned news, just like China, just like North Korea. And they also want to penalize fact-checking. They don't want fact-checking. They want to prohibit the FBI. This is written out in their manifesto. They want to prohibit the FBI from investigating or exposing disinformation or misinformation. They don't want there to be any fact checking. They want to be able to tell whatever lie the state news wants to tell, and have nobody challenged it at all. That's spelled out.
Yeah.
So now think about it. So they want nobody to be able to challenge their lies. They want only one source of information. So you there's no more free press. Oh, and then they also want to implement the military to be used as a police force if people want to try to practice what they used to have as a right, which was the freedom to peaceably assemble to address grievances with. No, the president would have concentrated power, absolute power, complete immunity. He would be a dictator. This is why the Supreme Court, or the Extreme Court now, has decided to take up a case which we already knew was settled back in Nixon's day, when Nixon needed a pardon, right? Because we all knew then that presidents are subject to the law. But then the Supreme Court has to postpone their decision until after the election.
Yeah.
Because if they were to rule that Donald Trump had absolute immunity in his previous position when he was president, that would mean that the current president, Biden, has absolute immunity. And they're not going to do that, of course. So they have to wait until after the election, at which time, if Biden wins, then the Supreme Court will say, well, I don't know why we didn't notice this before. We've always known that the president is subject to the law. But if Trump wins, then they decide he gets absolute immunity. He's president forever, for as long as a 78-year-old fried food fiend can live. But they only need 180 days. They only need him to win the election, and within 180 days, they have all these executive orders lined up. That's it. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to be doing a series of videos about this. And I tried to explain this to my mother, who, of course, she said, no, it's the Bidens that are doing it. I'm like, no, Mom, we have all of this documentation in their own words. I can show you. And so I tried to show her a Senate or a congressional hearing where Jasmine Crockett from Texas, from Dallas, where I live, where she has the authors of Project 2025. She's talking to them directly. This is not news. This is not biased news reporting. This is the recording of the actual discussion where she got them face to face. She got them to admit all of these things that I just described. In Congress, they admitted that in Congress. But I can't get my mom to watch a 3.5-minute video where this transpires because she says she doesn't want to know. She wants to believe what she wants to believe. She only believes lies. If it's something that you could disprove in a moment, that's what she believes. If it's something that can't be substantiated at all ever, that's what she believes. But if it's something you can disprove in a moment, she doesn't even want to know.
Right. Yeah.
And when she would tell me these crazy things, and of course religious believers are like this. They tell me these crazy things like, Obama was a Muslim. He admitted to being a Muslim. Okay, well, if we made such a big stinking deal that JFK was a Catholic, I think we'd probably make a big stinking deal over having a Muslim president. I think that'd be global news, actually. So show me where this happened. She shows me a 17-minute video with all these different clips from different presentations. And then she sits back confidently, arms folded as if she's won something, and says, see? I'm like, yeah, I just saw a 17-minute video where Obama never once implied in any way that he was a Muslim. So how did you come to your conclusion? She goes, he just did. Okay, let's watch the whole video again. And when he says that he's Muslim, stop the video right there. Watch the whole thing. So we get to where he's addressing a Muslim audience, and he mentions something about what you read in the Holy Quran. And she stopped it, and she said he wouldn't call it the Holy Quran unless he's Muslim. Like, well, Mom, he was part of his childhood was in fact in a Muslim country. He is trying to be bipartisan. He is trying to be supportive of everybody. In another presentation, he mentions the Holy Bible. I've mentioned the Holy Bible. I've mentioned the Holy Quran. Do you think that means that I'm a Muslim? You know, but you can't reason with people. They want to believe what they want to believe, and that's what they want to believe. And they're going to find whatever will confirm that and ignore everything that contradicts it.
Yeah, unfortunately. And it's a large portion of our country that feels that way. You've actually visited my area before. You gave a speech at Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia. And I live in Ashland, Kentucky, which is right beside that. And this area is just chocked plumb full of young Earth creationists. And it's been a thing. Like when I first became an atheist, I went on this thing of, I can convince somebody that at least that this part isn't true. And, at least that there wasn't a worldwide flood. We not only don't have evidence for it, but we can show that that's not the case, And I realized very quickly that it didn't matter, that they don't care. They don't want to know. They don't want to even listen to you unless they think they're going to get a chance to preach back at you. So it's been interesting.
It bothers me that logic just doesn't apply ever. On the global flood thing, I was arguing with somebody earlier today, just tells me that the fossils prove the flood. No, they don't. Here's a video I made on how paleontology disproves the flood, and he just repeats the same lie. Like we started out this thing. You said, no, I'm not going to watch that video because it's just lies. The fossils prove the flood, and that's it. No, you're ignoring an awful lot of stuff that logically cannot be the case if there was a global flood. And you can't actually produce any actual fact, something that we can both show to be true, that is positively indicative of or exclusively concordant with your conclusion. Not one fact ever. I got the fossil record. No, I got the fossil record, but I can give you specifics, and you can't. Yeah. They don't care. There's nothing in there.
Yeah.
One of the examples that I like to bring up is, and there's many, that logically cannot be the case if there was a global flood. But one of my favorites is the tallest mountain in Texas, which Texas doesn't have real mountains, but the tallest mountain in Texas is not actually a mountain. It's a coral reef. Now, coral can grow a couple of centimeters a year under pristine conditions, right? So if your sea levels are rising, appreciably slow the way they do, then over the way that sea levels rise and land masses shrink in different places, these are not abrupt things. They don't happen quickly, and so the coral reefs tend to they need that certain amount of sunlight. They want to be in the warmth of the water, so they want to be real close to the surface, if not right at the surface. I say want to. This is just the emergent property of it. This is just how coral grows. They have to be, if they're too deep, they're not going to grow. Yeah. So we can have something that under pristine conditions can grow a couple centimeters a year maximum. That's the fastest they can grow. And we've got one in Texas that is 2,000 feet high. 2,000 feet high. And it's a coral reef. It cannot happen in a tumultuous global flood. It cannot happen after 1 year of rain that then recedes. You can't build a foundation of former coral reefs on top of coral reefs on top of coral reefs we're talking about something that when you do the math, the fastest possible way that this could happen, 150,000 years. No way it could happen any faster than that. Logic then tells you no global flood. But that's just one of many examples. But of course, you can't get people to think logically. What I have encountered instead is emotional, psychotic episodes where they complete breakdown. Where they're crying, they're weeping, they just, actual tears. I had one person just drop to their knees, stick their fingers in their ears, shake their head, and go yeah, because they didn't want to hear. Because I'm making sense, and they can't believe what on some level they gotta already know is true. They have to believe what they already know is not true. And I've heard many people just defend it that way. That they're going to believe even if it's not true. Even if they had proof that it's not true, they're going to believe it anyway.
Yeah. The speaking of weeping, we actually have a person in common that we've both debated it at one time or another. Kyle Adams, Mormon. And
does that kid an idiot? Oh my dad.
Yeah.
Oh, we find more evidence all the time. Okay. What is some of this evidence you found? More all the time. Name some.
He gave me some quote from some Australian science museum, and immediately I was like, well, let's go look at that quote. What do you know? It doesn't exist. They didn't actually say that thing he says they said.
Yeah. Funny that.
Yeah. But yeah.
I saw this thing when in '87 there was a documentary on the Rajni, no, not Rajneesh Bhagwan. It was the Beatles, Swami, not Prabhupada. There was another one, but he created the University of Transcendental Meditation, and these guys go into this facility, and they're learning how to fly. And the way that they're flying is they're on very heavily padded, like air mattresses, just like a room full of air mattresses. They get down in lotus position where they have their knees and their feet locked in a like a pretzel kind of configuration where you would meditate. And they are bouncing up and down and bouncing around the room, pretending to fly. Obviously pretending. But because faith is convincing yourself of shit that ain't true, they think they're flying.
Yeah.
They're on video, not flying. But
It's
they
like
believe it anyway.
The breatharians.
It was the Maharaji Mahesh Yogi. That was the guy's name. And he was the one that tutored the Beatles. But anyway.
Yeah. It's and I thought, because I haven't taken part in many debates, I've done a couple, and I thought, well, me and Kyle Adams kind of had a past where he was a dick to me, and it was a personal thing. I just wanted to go on and destroy his stupid arguments, and but I thought like Noah's flood or a worldwide flood in general would be like an easy place to start. Like, I know that I can, show that this isn't the case in any number of ways. And you actually did a series of videos on all of the different branches of science that disprove Noah's flood. And I referred to that a little bit too. And for an example from like a couple different other ones saying, like even this, disproves your position. And it's weird. And it's actually been brought up here recently that I've been asked to, try and debate Kent Hovind. And I'm not really interested in doing that, honestly. But I thought
he doesn't deserve the attention.
No. And I thought about the only way that I would do it is if we made bingo cards that had all the little things that he says in every single conversation.
Dogs produce dogs.
Bingo. Exactly.
You think you came from a rock?
Yeah.
That argument, by the way, just real quick. Evolution does not allow. There's 2 natural laws of evolution that do not allow for dogs to produce non-dogs, whatever the fuck that means. And also on the thing about we came from a rock, he thinks that the Earth, the entire Earth, is a rock. He already admitted to me that water in a frozen solid state would not be called a rock. Therefore, the Earth is not entirely made of rock. And the first organisms were entirely liquid, which by definition is not rock. And they didn't, the first organisms did not include what would be typically recognized as minerals. So in no capacity is he correct. Nobody believes we came from a rock. Oh, I'm sorry. Creationists believe they came from a rock. They think that we are magically animated mud golems.
Yeah. This whole thing of evolutionists think that the whole universe was just poofed out of nothing, and I'm like, where do you think it came from as a creationist? Because I thought that was your position, not mine.
Yeah, my position is that there was never just nothing.
Right.
So it can't have come from nothing if there was never nothing. And then they want to know where it came from. And I'm like, well, material energy is eternal, never created. And then, of course, what do you do with that? Well, what had to come from somewhere, really? Why? Every model of cosmogony that has a singularity has the singularity as existing before cosmic inflation. So that's not nothing. And there are some ideas that that maybe there's a prior stage of the universe which goes into some kind of contraction, so that what we end up with is like an eternal oscillation of one form or another. And there's different there's different concepts of it. Big Bang, Big Crunch, and then other and some other variants of that. But it's still an eternal universe. Then if there's no prior form of the universe, then we still have the singularity existing before time began, which logically means before time, so eternal, and still never a point when there's just nothing.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
And if there was a point where there was just nothing, the Bible's still wrong about everything.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a river called Euphrates, and there's a place called Ethiopia, but there's not a lot else in the Bible that got right.
Yeah. All those places, and there's some historical events in there, so the Bible must be true. And I'm like, well, why? Why does that follow? That doesn't make any sense at all. Like, there's all kinds of fictional movies that take place in for example, Stephen King places all of his stories in Derry, Maine, a real place that exists. But Insomnia is not a documentary. It's fiction. And that's another thing too. You said, like, why? And that's the thing that I found myself asking a lot whenever they say, well, it has to have been this. And I say, well, why? Why does it have to be that? Where does anything say it has to be like that? And even if it is like that, it still gets you nowhere. It still leaves you at, you think it was a specific God that, violated all the laws of physics and the natural world to do something that doesn't even make any sense.
I don't know if you've seen this video, but I did a series on the evolution of snakes a year or so ago. And one of those videos talked about the creationist paradox. The last video of that talked about the creationist paradox of snakes, wherein Creationists do not, damn it, dogs, shut up. Creationists do not ever describe what a kind is, with one exception. There's only one clade that they actually do describe in the Bible, and that is snakes. We are to believe that all snakes descend from this mythical talking serpent. And if you accept that all snakes have evolved from this, and yes, the word evolution is there, well, it's not adaptive. What is adaptation? Adaptation literally means, the biological definition of adaptation is evolution under the influence of natural selection. So don't tell me it's not evolution, it's adaptation, because adaptation is evolution. But if you think and evolution is a theory of biodiversity. So you've got 6,000 species of snake from one original common ancestor. And here's the breakdown of the phylogenetic tree on snakes, how they separate from boas and pythons and vipers and elapids, and there's all these different family groups, right? This in a hierarchy. This is a taxonomic tree of snakes. So if you say that all snakes develop from this one, well, then you accept common ancestry, you accept vestigial features, because here's the ones that are that demonstrate that. Here are some transitional species between boas and pythons, between pythons and colubrids, and between colubrids and elapids and viperids and all of that. All of that is detailed there, and you accept that that's the case. We have vestigial leg bones. We have even leg bones in some living snakes. Where they have the mating claws and everything, and it's attached to a pelvis. And then of course, we got the fossil forms, which you got to admit those too, where the snake had actual back legs, not front legs, because that's important. They only had back legs. So this happened after you will crawl on your belly all the rest of your days, if that's the perspective you want to come to. So everything that creationists would normally complain about, beneficial mutations, transitional species, either in the fossil record or existing, just all of evolution entirely, common ancestry, the hierarchy tree, everything. If for their story, they have to accept that all, and they won't.
Right.
They won't even talk about it.
Yeah.
I've posted that video on a number of creationist groups on Facebook. No discussion at all from any creationist.
Sounds right. What I like is whenever they say, look at this fossil of a snake that we found, and here's a modern boa constrictor, and they say, see, they haven't changed, they're the same. And I'm like, that's not the same snake. It's a snake. It's not exactly the same. But yeah.
And then there are some other things, like I mentioned, beneficial mutations, for example. The fossils that they're looking at very often are medsoid snakes. And medsoid snakes, they may look superficially like boas, but they have a solid lower jaw, just like a lizard does. But then, at some point after this stage, there's a beneficial mutation where all these other snakes, not all of them are this way. The macrostromatid snakes, they have where the jaw separated. It's in two pieces, held together by an elastic tendon. And this is what allows snakes to swallow things bigger than their head. So people used to say that they would unhinge their jaws. No, they don't unhinge their jaws. Their bottom jaw is stretchable, malleable, and they can spread it out and just wrap it around the large thing and then just put their jaw back together at the end.
Yeah.
That's a beneficial mutation that it allows them to do that. And we have other examples, specifically identified mutations in embryology. You can see the embryological development where this mutation occurred that caused a rear fang colubrid to become a front fanged elapid or a front fanged viperid. Same type of mutation in both cases. And they know the mutation. So we can show all of this. But we are talking about people who want to make believe. They want to pretend. And they're not going to be paying attention to things like this about snakes because they think that snakes can talk.
Yeah.
You mean they can't? You
It's
need
a
to read the same
frustrating
books I
thing.
read, Aaron.
It's a frustrating thing for me when I meet people, and I've always had the impression that anybody I meet on the street is likely to know everything I know. I have learned in my childhood arrogance, if I thought I knew something somebody else didn't know, and I acted like, well, you don't know, and it turns out that they did, right? So I've learned to have a little bit more humility, and I just expect that everybody knows stuff. Everybody knows somebody knows. Yeah, everybody knows something I don't. But it's more likely that they probably know everything I do. But I'm increasingly frustrated by how little the average person on the street knows about a damn thing. That's frustrating. Whenever I encounter, because we take our snakes out to, public places sometimes, and the questions that I get are so damn dumb. I mean, how does somebody think that a boa constrictor is venomous? Really?
Yeah.
Or that they don't have bones. One of my son's science teachers said that snakes were invertebrates because they didn't have bones.
Oh man.
A science teacher.
Yeah.
In Texas schools.
That's awful. It's funny, but at the same time, it's like, man, this is bad.
Yeah, and all the people that come up every time I take them anywhere, it was like, and people would touch the snake, they'll pet the snake. Oh, I didn't expect it to feel like this. What did you expect to feel like? I thought they were slimy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so many people are just fine embracing their misconceptions and moving on. I think that's been the big difference of why I separated from the young Earth creationist hell that I live in. I just wasn't okay with like, well, that science book says this thing. Science book must be wrong. I just wasn't okay with that, and I had to look into it further. And some people just seem fine with that, I guess. I don't.
William Lane Craig made the statement in his book Reasonable Faith, which is an oxymoron. He made the statement that if there's ever a conflict between science and faith, that science got it wrong.
Yeah.
And I've heard from many other people that believe that the Bible is the only source of truth in our world. Let all else be a lie. And so everything we can show to be true is a lie, and only the book of lies is true.
Yeah, that it just, I don't know. Sometimes I just look at people and don't know how to even answer the some of the crazy. It's especially things to do with like the age of the Earth, because it's like, look. I mean, as much as I hate to just say it this way, like, look around, like, look. Get a telescope and look up in the sky, and then tell me how you get to that position other than my book says a thing. And they're content with my book says a thing.
Well, they're also content with when you show them other scriptures. You show them the Quran, well, the Quran is based on the Bible, or the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is based on the Bible. Actually, no, the Book of Mormon is more based on the Quran, because it's while it literally copies from the Bible, it's kind of philosophically based on Islam, because Joseph Smith idolized Muhammad and he wanted to create something like Muhammad did. But there are scriptures that are older than the Bible, and a lot of people get confused about that. They think that Genesis is the oldest book ever written, that it was the first book ever written. They've got this huge revelation coming that Genesis, most of the stories in Genesis, in the form that they are in Genesis, did not occur until they're post-exilic. They're like in the 5th century BCE. And there are other books that are thousands of years older than the oldest books of the Bible. And they don't have any concept of this. And so there are books of scriptures. I mean, the Rig Veda, all of the Vedic scriptures, the Mahabharata, the chapter called the Bhagavad Gita, on which Bhakti Hinduism is based, the Avestas of Zarathustra, all of the, and a lot of this, the Bible actually borrows from some of these other religions, just, little tropes here and there. And people are completely content to dismiss all of that. And even though all of these scriptures have been presented as the absolute truth and the revealed word of the one true God, even when they can't agree on who the God is or what he wants, the people today who follow the Bible are completely content to just dismiss all these older books as being simply the works of men. How could that possibly be true? They didn't know what they were talking about. They're just pretending to speak for God. But this one that didn't show up until thousands of years later and includes some of the same stories with all the important details. The trivial details are intact. The important details are different, like which God it was. They still want the Bible to be the true one because and somebody was explaining this to me recently, and it's not something that I can really grasp, that these people don't want understanding. It's not even necessarily that they want to believe something. They want certainty. That's a thing I can't get.
Yeah.
Certainty. If certainty is deceptive. Whenever somebody tells me, I know for a fact that there's a God. No, you don't know that, and it's not a fact. But they want to be they want to be certain of it. They don't like honest. Like a scientist can't say that something is the truth until or unless they don't say it's the truth anyway. They just say it's true. Subtle philosophical difference there. A scientist will not say something is true until or unless they can show the truth of it. The evidence backing that position. Whereas religion just makes up shit that ain't true and calls it the absolute truth.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I liked was when you look back at like some of the Mesopotamian lore, it's hard to read that and not immediately say, "Oh, well, that's where the Bible got this from."
Yep,
that's exactly where this came from. I mean, the stories and even the names are the same in much of it. Like what Adam was Adamu, or I forget.
Adamu or Adapa. Different legends were different translations of the same etymological meaning.
Yeah.
Man of the Red Earth, or the first man, or I like Man of the Red Earth because they just said the dirt was red.
Yeah.
And that's what makes blood red. I'm not sure where they get that.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying. Like, there's a half a dozen different versions of Noah's flood that are at least 1,000 years older than the Genesis version of that flood. And there's important details that each of these half dozen versions have in it. It's not just that Noah releases the dove one day and the raven another day, whatever, and all of that kind of detail is the same. While the gods behind the whole thing, that important detail is different. It's not just that. It's that every one of these ancient versions in the Epic of Gilgamesh, in the Epic of Atrahasis, and the Eridu Genesis, all of those. And I think even Enuma Elish, I'll have to check that, but I think even Enuma Elish includes this. But all of them refer to either Ubar-Tutu, who is referenced in the Sumerian King List, which, by the way, the Sumerian King List is one of those documents that I'm talking about, because it says, and then the flood washed over. And so the king at that time was supposed to be Ubar-Tutu's son, Ziusudra. And then when you read all of these other versions, they either mention Ubar-Tutu, or they mention Ziusudra, or they mention Shuruppak, which is the city in which the flood was centralized. So we know which flood they're all talking about. They're all talking about the same local event centered on the city of Shuruppak and the Iraqi floodplain, which flooded to a depth of 15 cubits, or 22 feet in modern measure.
Which is almost
Where
as high as a mountain, but not quite.
Well, in that low-lying area, that depth of a flood would have obscured everything. It would have been their whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's it's been declared to be like it was just a swelling of the Euphrates, but everywhere that is capable of having a flood also had to have had at some point the worst flood it ever had. And so they had this profoundly bad flood at this one point to about 2,900 BCE. And that's what all of these legends are based on. So we've got this guy in a coracle who's taking his goats or whatever. He's punting down the Euphrates to take his goats to market. And that's where Noah's Ark comes from. He gets washed out into the Red Sea. His punting stick is now too deep, or the punting stick doesn't work anymore. Yeah, and when he finally comes ashore again, he sacrifices something to a different set of gods. And why did he build the coracle? Well, according to a later story, he built the set because one of the gods, all the gods planned to cause this flood because men got too noisy. And so one of the gods comes and whispers things to him through the wall. Hey, by the way, I'll just let you know there's going to be a big damn flood. You better build a boat. And it's details like that change.
Yeah.
That tells you that there can never have been a Noah's flood. But again, we're talking about logic and using logic on people who refuse who have given up on logic, who won't think rationally.
Yeah. One of the things I like to point out when it comes to all those various stories is the writing style of the time was to take a pre-existing story and then embellish it and fictionalize it to whatever story you're trying to tell.
Or at least take an inspiration from it.
Yeah.
Like I read a thing about remember the movie Independence Day? Yeah, that first movie. I read this brilliant article that was talking about all these elements that are in Independence Day, where they occurred in other movies prior to that.
Yeah.
So there's almost nothing original about it. You would think the compilation that this is original. You've got something that's you got flying saucers the size of a whole city and on all of it, but there's actually nothing original about it because every one of these elements appeared in earlier stories.
Yeah.
And so people draw inspiration. They're just writing what they know, what motivated them. They're not necessarily plagiarizing. They're not even necessarily even borrowing. They're taking inspiration from.
Yeah. Very good point. Well, I have a few questions and super chats here from the audience, just a few. And if you don't mind going through these with me.
Sure.
Big Bad Mama sent a super chat for $5. Aron, do you see a progression in people going from Young Earth Creationism to atheism? For example, a step where they accept an old Earth.
Yeah. My wife, when I met her, she was an old Earth creationist. It's funny how many Young Earth creationists you have who live in the Permian Basin and don't know why it's called the Permian Basin. And their income comes from the fossil fuel industry, and they don't know why it's called fossil fuels. But all of the petrogeologists definitely know that it's not 6,000 years old. So the people who make a substantial amount of money on this had got to know the way geology really works. So but they also want to compartmentalize. They also want to believe in this fairy tale. So what they do is they come up with the old Earth creationism, and then whatever bullshit excuses they have to try to justify these two perspectives. Glenn Morton was a petrogeologist, and he said that Monday through Friday he knew that the Earth was millions of years old, but on the weekends he believed it was 6,000.
Sounds about par for the course there.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So that's one thing, because I mean when you get rid of the young Earth thing, there's such a weight of there's so many lies you have to tell yourself to believe that the Earth is only 6,000 to 10,000 years old. There's just too much against it, and so it's a hell of a lot easier for people to just accept that the Earth is old and then come up with some other excuse for the Adam and Eve thing.
Yeah.
Of course, that means you got to get rid of flood geology, but then there's even Christian universities that won't teach flood geology anymore because they're teaching professional geologists, and these people are finding out right quick there is no truth to flood geology. So rather than discredit the organization, the institution, don't teach flood geology, teach old Earth, and then that controversy never comes up.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, while we're talking about the flood, I've got a question, or somebody else brought it up in chat. Are you going to be at the ARC protest this year, Aron, or are you going to take it off? Or
yeah, I don't have any plans to be there. I haven't been asked to be there, and
well, we're asking you. We're actually trying to get a group down there. Several of us are going to be there, like trying to make a weekend of it. Not that you necessarily do, because my bucket list, and you'll probably smoke me now because I can't eat hot wings like I used to, but I want to sit down and eat hot wings with the great Aron Ra, because I've seen you on fire a few times.
well, thank you for that. It just things have been, to be quite blunt, things are financially tight. I'm not traveling as much as I used to. We've got a lot of responsibilities at home that my wife is pretty much saddled down here. She can't travel at all anymore. And so when I go someplace, I'm always feeling guilty that I'm going somewhere and she can't go.
Right. I understand that.
So I'm not, I will be in Sarnia, Ontario in August, but I'm not traveling like I used to. For a decade, I was at a different conference, convention, or rally every single month, at least one per month.
Wow.
That went on for 10 years. When we got to COVID and COVID changed everything, I was in South Africa, and when I went on an expedition there, and when it was supposed to be that when I come back, that the middle of that week I was supposed to be, or just 4 days later, I was supposed to be in Austin for an event there at the state capitol, and then that weekend right after that, I was supposed to be in Miami to take a cruise of the Caribbean. And then right after that, I was supposed to be in Phoenix for another big convention. I mean, the weekend after that. And all of this was while I was still taking classes as an undergrad. And I remember thinking, I can't do this. I can't keep up with myself.
Well, we thank you for doing it anyway.
Well, it looks like I'll be letting my hair grow out and wearing a trench coat and walking around with 47 snakes on me somewhere. I'll just tell everybody I'm Aron. I just hope I don't get beat up.
Yeah, I live about a little over an hour from the Ark Encounter, and I just with the community and stuff came up with the idea to have some people come and spend the weekend in Kentucky and experience what fun that is, and then that being the weekend of the Ark Encounter protest and stuff. And so there's a group of us that are going to get together and all go down to it. And so that's where that came from. But
and because,
by the way, I watched your last wing challenge. It was a doozy.
Thank you. The upcoming election is going to have to command a lot of my attention, because I can't find anybody who's already read every page of this 920-page manifesto and written out all the notes on it. So I'm going to be having to do a lot of research on that. I'm going to try to induct people to help me on that, because let's each of us read a few hundred pages or whatever. And try to get this knocked out, and as we'll highlight all the things they actually plan to do. Let's make reference of it so we can get it verbatim from the document. But one thing that the Heritage Foundation has said, or that the people working for the Heritage Foundation on that document have said, is that they are poised to, if Trump wins this election, that's it for our constitutional republic. They'll still have a constitution. It's just not going to be the founding document anymore.
Yeah.
Because they're going to ignore it, throw it out, change bits of it, like Trump said. You can change bits of the Constitution to suit you, like Putin did. Right? Just change it to give the president more power and to keep him in office forever and take away rights from the citizens. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So people need to be made aware of that. But the Heritage Foundation has also admitted that if they don't win this election, they've been relentless for 50 years in trying to take over the country this way. This was what got me started as an activist in the first place. But they admitted that if they don't get it this election, they're never going to have this opportunity again. They're not going to be able to seize power the way they want to, like this.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful about that. We're not fighting the many-headed hydra constantly. There's an end goal here. This thing can be killed before it regenerates into something else.
I look forward to you covering that stuff because I get into some of that every now and then, and I look forward to your perspective on it because, and also anyone out there who isn't familiar with what the Heritage Foundation is, without even this part of it, the 2025 plan being talked about, do a quick Google search if you want to be horrified.
Want to be horrified?
Yeah.
People always used to warn me about the Illuminati. People used to warn me about the Illuminati and all of that. And while the Illuminati is not real and there's not, like reptiles and human guys in control of the government and all that, there are agencies that are less overt, but that are clearly verifiable. They're there and they're stirring shit up.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Yahoo again gave us a $2 super chat. This is the best live stream I've seen today. Thank you all. That's Justin from over at Wavelength, the Deep Six show you did with them. They're good friends of the channel. I like those guys. Yep. Look at the trees, $5. Aron, do you like knives? I saw a video of you with a big knife on your belt in a dry riverbed looking at imprints.
Yeah, I have a Bowie knife that I quite like, but I've had trouble with it. People get weird. In a place where you can carry concealed guns, and everybody's fine with that. If I have a knife on my hip, people get scared.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly asked to take it off and put it back in the car or whatever. So I got tired of having to take my knife off because people are afraid of that. They don't have a problem with walk in with a gun. They're perfectly happy, but they're scared of the knife.
Yeah, I kind of see some of that here. In Kentucky, everybody's got 3 guns at least. It's mandatory. And
as I pointed out, every time I've had to use my knife, emergency services were never required.
Yes.
Well, it's not like you can open a box with your gun now, is it?
Yeah. Well, not if you want what's inside.
Yeah.
The Native Atheist, $10 super chat. Joe, you've had some awesome guests on. Thank you, Native Atheist. It's been a pleasure for me too. I appreciate it. Let's see. We got Bree from over at Havsa. The Kentucky Atheist, will you ask Aron if he saw Vasuki indicus? Clearly the serpent from the Garden of Eden. Hee.
Okay, I'll have to go look that one up. I don't actually know that genus name.
Bree covers a lot of cryptids and stuff, so it's let's see. if Aron could pick just two things, what are his best, easiest to explain evidences for speciation?
There's a phylogenetic chart of canids that show, people will say that dogs and wolves can still interbreed, so there's the same thing. Okay, fine, if that's your definition, what about the African painted dog, or the South American bush dog, or the Asian raccoon dog? They can't interbreed with any other dogs. And then we've got all these different species of foxes that also can't interbreed with other dogs. And then there's different species of them as well. So they're nicely divided. The maned wolf is not a wolf, cannot breed with wolves. It's what happens if you tried to make a wolf out of a fox. So it's a very different type of animal. And yet all of these, again, there's a hierarchical tree of common ancestry, and this is all indicated genetically. And the creationists will fall over themselves trying to find some bullshit excuse for how the African painted dog is just a dog, even though it can't interbreed with other dogs because they're too genetically distinct.
Yeah.
And they can't also admit that foxes are just dogs if they can't interbreed with each other or with other dogs because they were in a higher taxonomic category of separation. All of this that's all evolution stuff that they can't think about because it's forbidden knowledge.
Yeah. And that actually leads me to something I wanted to bring up during this, the phylogeny challenge. Now, I've seen all these videos of theists saying 10 questions atheists can't answer and blah blah whatever. And whenever I seen you talk about the phylogeny challenge, I was like, yes, finally, just answer this question, and I'll let you describe what that is briefly for just so people understand why it's such a big deal.
The argument is that creationists will tell you that they accept evolution. Sometimes they'll even admit that they accept macroevolution, but that they don't accept common ancestry. If they know what the terms mean, then they don't accept common ancestry. They want there to be different, separately created kinds of animals. Well, if that's true, then you should be able to produce four individual animals that science would consider closely related. 2 from the same kind and 2 more from different kinds, and then be able to show how you know that they are different kinds. Because they want to say that it's not a family tree, but that it's an orchard of little family trees, and each family tree began separately. Remember we talked about snakes earlier?
Mm-hmm.
This is all snakes descend from the common ancestral snake in the garden, but that means that they have to accept all these aspects of evolution that they don't want to accept. The same applies to everything that they try to concoct as a family tree for anything else. If they want to say that dogs and cats are separate kinds, well, why are the dogs and bears and weasels and seals all in the conoidean side, and why are the cats and hyenas and civets and meerkats and mongooses and that sort of thing all in the phyloidean side, and why are they so similar to each other? Nimravids are essentially cats, but not quite cats. There's civets, which are almost cats, but not quite cats. And then all the hyenas on the phyloidean side are descended genetically from civets.
Yeah.
But the creationists can't look at the actual biology, what they call the baramins. There's no formal study of baramins. There's no consistent anything. They can't show where their own orchard is rooted, because
Right.
There's an old saying that the more you try to get one thing by itself, the more you find it connected to everything else in the universe. If there was any truth to creationism at all, we would know the distinctions between these different kinds. How many kinds of carnivoran mammals did Noah have on the ark? There would be a way to know that.
Yeah. And that's why I love that as an argument for the people that want to say that evolution isn't the case.
It's essentially explaining what a kind is, showing distinctions between the kinds, and how we know that. So rather than one question, it's a handful of questions about, are mallards all related to each other and to all other ducks, like Muscovies and such? Are all ducks related to each other and also galliforms? And they just go down, are ducks related to chickens, and are all, it, and I only care about when the answer becomes no. If the answer is when they're biologically related, it means that they evolved from a common group. And then we go down to the next node, to the larger parent category, and the next one for the ancestral category. Where does it become no? And how do you know that?
Yeah.
Because there are so many transitional species that exist for every level, that still exist today for virtually every level.
One of the things I've always gotten a kick out of is when they showed Archaeopteryx to different creationists, and half of them said it was a bird and half of them said it was a dinosaur, and it's like, exactly.
Or they said it was a hoax.
Yeah, that too.
Because there was a couple of people that said that the Archaeopteryx was just Compsognathus, just a dinosaur with feathers glued onto it.
You know how they do.
Yeah, but now we have this whole collection of Paravian dinosaurs that they're like. It turns out the velociraptors do not look like what they do in Jurassic Park. They were fully feathered, and they're not the only ones. There's a fuck ton of dinosaurs that had full feather plumage, definitely did not fly. They had claws in those wings, and they may use the wings for sexual display or whatever, but they were especially helpful in brooding a larger clutch of eggs, because an old creationist argument was that there's no purpose for a half a wing. So evolution requires that there be a half a wing, but you can't use a half a wing. Yeah, you can. You can actually keep the insulation over a larger clutch of eggs with half a wing.
Yeah, that's a good explanation.
I also did a 10-part series on the evolution of birds from dinosaurs, where I'm interviewing paleontologist Darren Naish, and we go through every detail about why birds are in fact dinosaurs now, not just evolved from them, why they are still dinosaurs now. And I do that while going through a presentation by David Menton, who was an apologist for Answers in Genesis. He was an anatomist who just tells all these lies in his hour-long presentation on these dinosaurs. And we show how everything he said is wrong and contrived and deliberately deceptive.
Yeah.
Because that's creationism.
Right.
Constantly lying. And then when you get called out, when everybody knows you're lying, keep lying.
Yeah. There are people who buy into the lies and are just believers in the lies, but for the most part, the ones that we see out there who spread the bad ideas and things know that they're lying. Places like the Discovery Institute, the Ken Hovens, the Ray Comforts, they know that they're lying. It's not.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I do what I do. But it's one thing to believe in something, and I could care less what anyone believes. I don't care. But when you use that belief to then go and lie about science to children, like Ken Ham packing an auditorium full of kids and making them repeat that the Earth is 6,000 years old, that's when I have a problem. And I have young children, and I know the things I was taught growing up. That speaking of the beginning of your activism, some of it, I'm sure you're familiar with a book called Of Pandas and People, or Of People and Pandas. That was my biology book, literally.
Oh my word!
in school. So it's like, I see these things, and where it took till I was 25 years and in college to realize that evolution was and is the best explanation for the diversity of life that we see today. And that we share, such a high percentage of our genetics with apes, or not with apes, we are apes, with chimpanzees and bonobos and these different species. And, I just hate to see that now it's, Ken Ham has started this whole homeschooling thing, and get them while they're young. And it's...
and restrict and control their information.
Yeah. But we will... I thank you for your time, and we'll get you out of here. I really appreciate you coming and talking to us, and I really do look forward to some of your stuff covering the Heritage Foundation's most recent bad idea.
Yeah.
But,
all right. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. And let me real quick, I forgot all about this. I got to talking to you and forgot. Let me give away a couple books real quick. We have, I'm going to be ordering and sending out copies of 2 of Aron's books, Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism and We Are All Apes. I actually recommend you get the audio version of Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism. That's Aron narrates it, and it's great and packed with great information and lots of great stuff. So
that would be the one I suggest too. The other one, just to be completely honest, is a coffee table book. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I tell you what, let's do this. I'll pick 4 people real quick, and those 4 people, you can email me at theKentuckyAtheist@gmail and tell me which of the 2 books you would like, in case you already have one of them or whatever. And I will send you either one. Let's
just
go.
Make sure Missing Mod wins one. She could use it. Sorry, MM.
Missing Mod, I'll get with you separately. If Missing Mod is a Young Earth Creationist of the Kent Hovind flavor, and if you will read it,
I got a question for Missing Mod then.
Sure.
Show me one thing Kent Hovind ever said in his entire career of anti-science apologetics. One thing he ever got right.
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So Look at the Trees, get a hold of me. Star Song, get a hold of me. Big Bad Mama, get a hold of me. And Azho, go for it.
Go for
if
what?
If you want to give it to Missing Mod, I'm fine with that. I hope she reads it.
She will.
Okay.
I'll pay for that one myself, just so she has one.
Well, Missing Mod and Michael Bell, you both won too. All right. I'll send books out to all you guys.
And look, Aron Ra won a copy of both books too. Wow.
Who's Aaron? I don't know that guy.
I said Aron.
I'm just messing with you.
I got to thinking, I said, did I stupidly say that after? That's the only thing I never wanted to say.
Yeah.
After I corrected so many people, it's not Aaron, it's Aron. And if I made the same mistake, just means that he's going to have to stay an hour longer so I can learn how to say his name. So it's a win-win.
Thanks everybody for coming and watching the show, and thanks Aron for joining us. You can check Aron out on his YouTube channel, of course, Aron Ra, at Aron Ra on YouTube. He has the same name on Patreon. He has a website, Aron Ra. If you look it up, he's the only guy named that, so not hard to spot. But thank you for coming, everyone. Have a great day, and see you soon.